The unspoken consequences of intimacy neglect. After 60, a gynecologist's perspective. Hello, my dear friends. Allow me to ask you a question that very few medical professionals ever think to pose. What is the one single part of your overall health that, if it is ignored after the age of 60, can quietly and insidiously make you feel as though you are aging twice as fast? And no, I am not referring to the appearance of wrinkles, to the growth of gray hair, or to the sensation of stiff joints. I am talking about something that is far more hidden from view: your intimate health. For many decades, our society has sent the very same consistent and damaging message to women in the years following menopause. The experience of intimacy no longer matters. The capacity for pleasure has an expiration date, and the feeling of desire is something that you will eventually outgrow. But here is the profound and unvarnished truth. That particular message is not just outdated, it is in fact incredibly dangerous. Because when you cease to care for this vital and important part of yourself, the resulting effects do not simply stay down there. They begin to ripple outward, impacting your circulation, your hormones, your mood, your bladder control, and even your fundamental sense of your own identity. I am Dr. Lily Stones, a board-certified gynecologist with more than 30 years of dedicated professional experience caring for women who are just like you, mothers, grandmothers, and caregivers. Women who have all lived extraordinary and remarkable lives, and in all of those many years, I have witnessed the very same quiet and insidious pattern play out time and time again. I have seen vibrant and energetic women slowly begin to lose their energy and their confidence, not because of any particular illness, but simply because no one had ever taken the time to tell them just how absolutely essential it is for them to be able to stay deeply and meaningfully connected to their own bodies. Take, for example, the story of Elena, one of my dear patients. She was 72 years of age, a joyful and doting grandmother who had always loved knitting by her window and laughing with her beloved grandkids. But over the course of time, her inner spark had begun to fade. She was not sick. Her heart was perfectly fine, and her blood pressure was well under control. And yet she was feeling progressively weaker, sadder, and less like herself with each passing day. The real and underlying issue, as we came to discover, was that she had been taught to completely neglect her own intimate health for many years, all under the false and damaging belief that it simply no longer mattered for her. And she is by no means alone in this experience. Thousands upon thousands of women experience this very same gradual and inexplicable decline, not because of the process of aging itself, but because of a state of profound and prolonged disuse. Just as a muscle will inevitably begin to weaken if you never ever exercise it, your own delicate intimate tissues, your circulation, and even your hormones will all begin to shift in a negative direction if you completely and utterly stop engaging with your own body. But here is the wonderfully hopeful news. Your body has an incredible capacity to be able to remember. With just a few small, gentle, and consistent steps, you can absolutely begin to restore your circulation, to improve your physical comfort, and to even reignite a sense of joy in your own life. And later on in this video, I am going to be sharing with you the incredible story of Margaret, an 81-year-old woman who had once told me that she felt completely and utterly invisible. And I will show you how one single and surprising change was able to completely and utterly transform her entire life, without any kind of a surgery and without any kind of a medication. So please, I encourage you to stay with me. This may very well be one of the most important and one of the most life-changing conversations that you will hear all year long. But before we continue, please allow me to ask you, has anyone ever taken the time to explain to you that the practice of self-intimacy is directly and inextricably linked to your overall health after the age of 60? If your answer is yes, finally, I would be so honored if you would please type a 1 in the comments section below. And if your answer is no, no one has ever told me this, I would be so grateful if you would please type a 0 in the comments section below. Your personal answers to this question will be able to help so many other women to be able to see that they are not at all alone in their own personal experience. I would like for you to please take just a moment to think about this. What is able to happen when you are forced to put your arm or your leg into a cast for a full 6 weeks? When that very same cast is finally able to come off, the muscles in that limb will look so much smaller, the skin will be so much thinner, and all of the strength in that limb will be completely and utterly gone. And this is not at all because that muscle had been in any way injured, it is simply because it had not been used. And the very same principle is also able to apply to your own delicate, intimate tissues. Your vagina and your clitoris are not at all passive structures. They are, in fact, full of a great many tiny little blood vessels and of a great many delicate and sensitive nerves that all rely on a steady and a consistent flow of your blood and on a gentle and a regular form of a stimulation in order to be able to stay in a healthy and a resilient state. And when that vital and important flow of your blood is able to stop, and when many, many months or even many, many years are able to go by without any form of an intimacy, your own delicate tissues will not at all just simply rest. They will in fact begin to weaken and to stiffen in a process that we doctors refer to as atrophy. And here is the most surprising part of all of this. This particular process will very often not at all first show up as a state of a vaginal dryness. For a great many women, it will in fact begin as something that is much subtler, a general and a pervasive dulling of their physical sensation, a sense of a physical discomfort whenever they are sitting down, or even just a simple and a profound loss of their interest in the experience of a touch. And according to both the esteemed Mayo Clinic and the North American Menopause Society, the complete and total absence of a regular and a consistent form of a stimulation in the years following the onset of menopause is able to accelerate all of these very same changes. The walls of the vagina are able to become so much thinner and so much less flexible. The clitoral tissue is able to lose a great deal of its own personal sensitivity, and the flow of your blood to the entire area is able to slow down in a very significant and a very dramatic way. Please allow me to tell you about Carol, who was one of my very dear patients. She was 71 years of age and she was a very graceful and a very polite woman, but when she had first sat down in my own office, her own voice had dropped down to a very quiet and a very soft whisper. "Stones," she had said, "I have not at all been able to feel comfortable in my own body for many, many years now, and I had simply thought that there was something that was broken deep down inside of me." But please know that she was not at all broken. Her own delicate tissues had simply and naturally adapted to a state of a prolonged and of a profound inactivity, in the very same way that a stiff and an achy joint is able to adapt when it is not at all being moved on a regular and on a consistent basis. And here is the very same hopeful part of this story that I had then been able to share with her, and what I so very deeply and so very profoundly want for you to be able to hear very clearly for yourself today. Your own body is in fact able to remember, and with just a few small and a few consistent and a few gentle steps, you can be able to restore your own sense of circulation, you can be able to improve the natural elasticity of your own delicate tissues, and you can also be able to reduce your own sense of a physical discomfort. And please allow me to give you a very simple and a very powerful analogy. I would like for you to please try to imagine for just a moment a simple garden hose that has been lying out in the hot and in the bright sun. And if the water is able to run through that very same hose on a regular and on a consistent basis, it will be able to stay very soft, very supple, and very flexible. But if it is simply allowed to sit there completely and utterly unused for many, many months, it will inevitably begin to stiffen and it will eventually begin to crack. And when you are finally able to turn the water back onto it once again, it will at first just begin to sputter. And your own delicate, intimate tissues are able to work in the very same way. A regular and a consistent flow of both your blood and of your own nerve signals is able to keep them feeling both alive and flexible, and without them they will inevitably begin to resist. So what can you be able to do starting as early as today? Well, here are just a few very gentle and very practical steps that you can begin to take. 1. You can begin to moisturize on a regular and on a consistent basis. I would like for you to please try to use a high-quality, pH-balanced vaginal moisturizer, just 3 to 4 times per week. And please know that this is not at all a lubricant. It is in fact for the purposes of a long-term sense of a comfort. 2. You can begin to use a little bit of a warmth before any kind of a connection. This could be in the form of a warm and a soothing bath, of a simple heating pad, or of even just a warm and a moist towel that has been placed over your own belly. The simple application of a heat is able to increase your own flow of your blood. 3. You can begin to practice a form of a gentle and of a mindful awareness of a touch. I would like for you to please try to place your own hand on your own lower belly or on your own thigh, not at all with a great deal of a pressure, but just simply and purely to be able to remind your own nervous system that this particular area of your own body still very much matters. And 4, I would like for you to please try to follow the simple 2-minute rule. I would like for you to please try to spend just 2 to 3 short minutes of a very gentle and of a very mindful form of an attention, just 3 times a week. And I would like for you to please try to think of it as being like a form of a circulation maintenance and not at all as any kind of a performance. And please allow me to reassure you of this, it is never ever too late for you. And even if you have not at all done any of this in many years, your own body is still very much able to respond to you. Your own delicate nerves and your own delicate blood vessels are all incredibly and undeniably resilient. And in fact, a recent study that had been published in the esteemed medical journal Menopause had been able to clearly show that all of the many women who had been able to maintain even just a light and a regular form of an intimacy, whether it had been with a partner or with themselves, had all been able to report a much lower level of all of the many different symptoms of an atrophy and a much greater sense of a physical comfort than all of the many women who had chosen to stop this practice completely and utterly. So please allow me to ask you, have you ever been able to notice for yourself any kind of a change, such as a state of a dryness, of a fading of your physical sensation, or of a physical discomfort, since the onset of your own menopause? And if your answer is yes, I would be so very honored if you would please type the word yes in the comments section below. And if your answer is not yet, then I would be so very grateful if you would please type the word no in the comments section below. And please know that your own personal response may just be the very thing that is able to give another woman the courage that she needs in order to be able to speak up. Now we have been able to see for ourselves just how our own delicate tissues are able to respond to a state of an intimacy. But that is just the very beginning of our story, because what is able to happen in your own body is also able to ripple upwards all the way to your own brain, and that is where the profound and the beautiful chemistry of our own joy and of our own motivation is able to come in. And please be sure to stay with me, because in the very next part of our discussion, I am going to be showing you exactly how the experience of an intimacy is not at all just about your own sense of a physical comfort, but it is also all about your own hormones and your own brain's chemistry, which are all able to work together to be able to protect your own mood, your own quality of sleep, and even your own sense of a resilience. We have just been talking about how all of your own delicate tissues are able to rely on a state of a healthy circulation and of a gentle use in order to be able to stay alive and well. But the story does not at all end there. And what is able to happen in your own body is able to ripple upwards straight to your own brain, because the experience of an intimacy is not at all just a purely physical act, it is in fact a very powerful and a very profound chemical event. And each and every single time that you are able to engage with your own body through the simple acts of a gentle touch, of an arousal, or of even just a simple and a loving hug, your own brain is able to release a veritable cocktail of some very natural and of some very beneficial chemicals that are then able to affect the way that you are able to sleep, and even the very way that you are able to face a state of And let's now take just a moment to be able to break down the 3 most important and the 3 most powerful players in all of this. 1. The hormone oxytocin, which is so often referred to as the bonding hormone. It is the very same hormone that is able to create in all of us the feelings of a calm, of a trust, and of a profound sense of a connection. And it is also able to lower the levels of the hormone cortisol in our bodies, the very same stress hormone that is able to leave you feeling so very tense and so very restless. And it is the very same hormone that is able to surge through a new mother's body when she is cradling her own brand new baby, or when you are able to embrace someone that you so deeply and so truly love. 2. The neurochemical dopamine, which is so often referred to as the motivation molecule. It is the very same neurochemical that is able to make our own lives feel so very rewarding, and without it the entire world can begin to seem so very gray and so very uninteresting. But with it you are able to feel so very energized, and you are able to look forward to all of your many different conversations, to all of your many different hobbies, and even to just some simple and some leisurely walks. And 3. The neurochemicals that are known as the endorphins. These are your own body's very own natural mood lifters and pain relievers. They are able to work to reduce your own sense of a physical discomfort. They are able to work to buffer you from the negative effects of a stress, and they are also able to give to you that very same after-exercise glow, the very same feeling that you are able to get from a very good and a very hearty laugh with your own friends. Now I would like for you to please try to imagine for just a moment what is able to happen when many weeks, many months or even many years are able to go by without you ever once being able to stimulate these very same powerful and these very same beneficial paths. The entire orchestra is then able to grow very quiet, and the beautiful music is then able to fade away, and instead of a beautiful and a profound sense of a harmony, there is now just a state of a profound and of a deep silence. And for a great many women, that very same silence is able to show up in their own lives as a state of an irritability, of a fatigue, of some very restless nights, or of even just a state of a profound and of a deep depression. One woman that I will never ever be able to forget was Linda, who was a retired school principal in her late 60s. She had first come into my own office with a very perfect posture and with some very kind and with some very beautiful eyes, but her own voice had been very heavy. Stones, she had whispered to me, I just do not at all feel like me anymore. And she had already tried taking a variety of different vitamins, and she had even tried taking some antidepressants, but nothing at all had seemed to be able to help her. And what we were then able to uncover together was something that was very simple, but that was also very profound. She had completely and utterly stopped engaging with her very own body, not at all because she had not at all cared about it, but simply because she had thought that her own personal time for an intimacy was now over. And what Linda had not at all been able to realize was that she had in fact completely and utterly cut herself off from one of her own body's very simplest and very most powerful reset buttons. And by simply and gently reintroducing some small and some gentle and some mindful habits, she was then able to reawaken all of those very same beneficial brain chemicals, and then slowly but surely her own inner spark had been able to return to her. And the science is able to fully and completely confirm this. A number of different studies that have been published in such esteemed medical journals as Menopause and Climacteric have all been able to clearly show that all of the many women who are able to maintain some form of an intimacy in their own lives, whether it is a partnered form or a self-reported form, are all able to experience a much better quality of their own sleep, a much lower level of their own personal anxiety, and a much greater sense of their own personal resilience when they are compared to all of the many women who have chosen to abstain from this practice completely and utterly. And why is this? It is simply because each and every single moment of a connection is able to trigger the release of the hormones oxytocin, of the neurochemical dopamine, and of the neurochemicals that are known as the endorphins, which are all able to gently and to lovingly nudge the brain away from a state of a fight or flight response and back into a state of a rest and restore response. I would like for you to please try to think of it as being like the simple and the beautiful process of tending to the deep and the profound root system of a beautiful garden. And without any kind of a water, the soil will inevitably begin to dry out, and all of the beautiful flowers will inevitably begin to wilt, but with a steady and with a gentle and with a consistent form of a watering, the entire and the complete garden is able to revive itself. And the experience of an intimacy is one of the very best ways that your own body is able to water the very roots of your own emotional garden. So how can you be able to begin to reactivate your own body's very own natural and very own beautiful chemistry? Well, here is a very simple and a very practical 3-step reset for you to be able to try. 1. The practice of a box breathing. I would like for you to please try to inhale for a full 4 seconds, to then hold your own breath for a full 4 seconds, to then exhale for a full 4 seconds, and to then hold your own breath for a full 4 seconds. And I would like for you to please try to do this for a total of 4 times. This particular practice is able to reduce the levels of the hormone cortisol in your own body, and it is also able to steady your own nervous system. 2. The practice of a warmth and of an intention. I would like for you to please try to place one of your own hands on your own heart or on your own belly, and to then just simply whisper to yourself something that is very kind and that is very loving. You can simply say to yourself, I am safe, or I matter. And this very simple and this very powerful act in and of itself can be able to facilitate the release of the hormone oxytocin in your own brain. And 3, the practice of a gentle and of a curious form of a touch. And I would like for you to please try to do this not at all with any kind of a goal in mind, but simply with a sense of an awareness. And even just 2 to 3 short minutes of this particular practice can be able to reactivate all of those very same feel-good chemicals in your own brain. And while it may all sound to be quite small and to be quite insignificant to you, Please know that the practice of a consistency is a very powerful thing, and within just a few short weeks of this new practice, a great many women are able to begin to notice that they are getting a much deeper and a much more restorative quality of their own sleep, that they are experiencing a much lower level of their own mood swings, and that they are also experiencing a much brighter and a much more positive outlook on their own lives. Linda was one of them. And after just a few short weeks of her having been able to practice her own personal breathwork, and of her having been able to practice a gentle and a mindful form of a reconnection with her own body, she had walked back into my own office with a beautiful and a brilliant light in her own eyes that I had not at all been able to see in her before. "I feel so much more like myself once again," she had said to me. And not at all in a suddenly younger kind of a way, but in a much more steady, in a much more vibrant, and in a much more alive kind of a way. So please allow me to ask you, have you ever been able to notice for yourself any kind of a change in your own mood or in the quality of your own sleep since the onset of your own menopause, such as a state of an irritability, of a fatigue, or of some very restless nights? And do you think that all of those very same changes could possibly be linked to this very same missing piece of your own body's very own chemistry? Please share with me a simple yes or a simple no in the comments section below. And please know that your own personal and your own honest answer to that question may just be the very thing that is able to help another woman to be able to feel a little bit less alone in her own personal journey. Now, here is something that is so very fascinating to me. The experience of an intimacy is not at all only able to restore your own delicate tissues or to be able to calm your own brain. It is also, in fact, able to train a very important and a very integral group of your own muscles that are so very essential to your own personal sense of a freedom and of an independence, the very same muscles that you are able to use every single time that you are able to laugh, that you are able to sneeze, or that you are even just able to stand up very tall. And in the very next part of our discussion today, we are going to be exploring the very important and the very integral role of your own pelvic floor. And we are also going to be exploring why it is so often referred to as the very foundation of a woman's own body. And we are also going to be exploring how the experience of an intimacy is able to act as a very natural and as a very beneficial form of a workout for it. And we are also going to be exploring what is able to happen when that very same foundation is able to weaken. And please be sure to stay with me. You will not at all want to be able to miss this. We have just been able to explore just how the experience of an intimacy is able to nourish your own delicate tissues and is also able to reawaken your own brain's chemistry. But now, let's go ahead and go a little bit deeper, all the way to the very foundation of your own personal sense of an independence, your own pelvic floor. And if you have never at all heard that particular term before, I would like for you to please try to picture this for just a moment. I would like for you to please try to imagine a beautiful and a supportive web of muscles that has been stretched all the way across the very bottom of your own pelvis. And that very same web of muscles is made up of a variety of different and distinct muscles, and its primary job is to be able to hold up your own bladder, your own uterus, and your own rectum. And it is also able to stabilize your own spine. It is able to support your own posture, and yes, it is also able to play a very important and a very integral role in your own experience of an intimate pleasure. And when this very same web of muscles is in a strong and in a healthy state, you are able to feel so very steady, you are able to feel so very confident, and you are also able to feel so very much in control. But when it is able to weaken, the effects of that weakening are able to ripple out everywhere. You may then begin to experience a sense of a leakage whenever you are able to laugh or to sneeze. You may then begin to experience a sense of a constipation or of a physical discomfort. You may then begin to experience a great deal of a trouble in being able to stand up very tall or in being able to walk for any long distances. And you may even begin to experience a profound and a deep loss of your own intimate and of your own physical sensation. And here is the most fascinating part of all of this. The experience of an intimacy in and of itself, and especially the experience of an orgasm, is one of nature's very own most powerful and most beneficial pelvic floor workouts. And during the very climax of an orgasm, all of the many different muscles of your own pelvic floor are able to contract in a very rhythmic and in a very coordinated way, just as if you were lifting some very heavy weights at the gym. But when the experience of an intimacy is able to disappear from your own life, so too is this very natural and this very beneficial form of an exercise. And over the course of time, that very same web of muscles is then able to loosen and the entire foundation is then able to weaken. And please allow me to share with you the very powerful and the very poignant story of Joan. She was 74 years of age. She was a very witty and a very sharp woman, and she was always and at all times ready with a brand new crossword clue. But behind her wonderful and her beautiful humor was a profound and a deep sense of a sadness, and she had then confessed to me that she had not at all been able to leave her own home in many, many weeks, not at all because of any kind of an illness, but simply because she was so very terrified of the possibility of leaking any urine in public. Every single time that I am able to laugh and every single time that I am able to sneeze, she had said to me, I am then able to feel so very humiliated. And she had simply come to believe that there was absolutely nothing at all that could be done about it, and that it was simply a normal and an unavoidable part of her own old age. But when I had then been able to examine her and when we had then been able to discuss all of her own personal habits, it had then become very clear to me that her own pelvic floor had been completely and utterly neglected for many years, and she had not at all been able to exercise it. And she had also not at all been able to engage it through the experience of an intimacy either. And so together we had then been able to build for her a very gentle and a very manageable plan. We had then been able to incorporate some very simple and some very effective pelvic floor exercises, which are most commonly known as the Kegels. We had then been able to work on her staying properly and sufficiently hydrated in order to be able to keep all of her own delicate tissues in a much more supple and in a much more resilient state. We had then been able to work on her being able to improve her own bowel regularity with the help of a little bit more of a fiber and of a movement in her own daily diet. And we had then also been able to work on her being able to gradually and to gently reintroduce a sense of a self-intimacy into her own life in order to be able to reawaken all of those very same hidden muscles. And within just a few short months, Joan's entire and complete life had been able to transform. She had then been able to begin to walk with her own friends once again. She had then been able to laugh without any sense of a fear at all, and she had even been able to begin to plan a trip to be able to go and to see her own sister who was living out of state. And when she had then looked at me and had said, I feel so very free once again, her own eyes had then begun to sparkle, and that one single and simple word, freedom, is exactly why all of this is able to matter so very much. Because what is at stake here is not at all just your own personal physical health. It is in fact your own personal sense of an independence, your own personal sense of a confidence, and your own personal ability to be able to live your own life on your very own terms. Now please allow me to give to you a very simple and a very practical starter routine that you can begin to try for yourself at home. And it is a routine that is able to take just 2 to 3 short minutes, just twice a day. 1. You must first be able to find the very muscles themselves. I would like for you to please try to imagine for just a moment that you are trying to stop your own flow of your urine in midstream, or that you are trying to hold back any gas. And that very same sensation is the very sensation of your own pelvic floor being activated. But please do not at all be sure to practice this on the toilet, as it can be able to confuse your own bladder. 2. You can then begin to do some very slow and some very gentle squeeze. I would like for you to please try to tighten your own pelvic floor muscles for a full 5 seconds, and to then just simply relax them for a full 5 seconds. And I would like for you to please try to repeat this for a total of 5 times. 3. You can then begin to do some very quick and some very gentle flicks. And at the very end of your slow squeezes, I would like for you to please try to do just 3 to 4 very short and very quick squeezes. And these are able to help you with any kind of a sudden and an unexpected stress, such as a cough. And 4. You can then begin to do a very simple and a very gentle posture check. I would like for you to please try to sit or to stand up very tall, and to then just simply relax your own jaw. And yes, it is in fact true that your own jaw and your own pelvic floor are both very deeply and very profoundly connected. And here is something else that is so very empowering. The experience of an intimacy is able to reinforce all of this, and even just a very gentle and a very mindful form of an arousal just a few times a week is able to naturally and to automatically engage your own pelvic floor, and it is also able to tone it without it at all feeling like any kind of an exercise. The National Institutes of Health has been able to confirm that all of the many women who are able to maintain a state of a pelvic floor activity either through the practice of an exercise or through the practice of a healthy form of an intimacy are all able to have a much lower risk of a urinary incontinence and of a pelvic organ prolapse. And that simply means that you will then be able to experience a much lower level of any kind of a leakage, a much lower level of any kind of a physical discomfort, and a much greater sense of a personal freedom. I would like for you to please try to think of your own pelvic floor as being like the very foundation of a beautiful and a sturdy house. And if that very same foundation is able to weaken, all of the many different walls of that very same house will then begin to crack, and the very roof of that very same house will then begin to sag. But if that very same foundation is able to stay in a strong and in a healthy state, that very same house will then be able to stand up very tall through all of the many different storms and through all of the many different years. And you are that very same house, and your own pelvic floor is the very same base. Now, I do in fact know that some of you who are listening to me right now may be thinking to yourselves, but Dr. Stones, is it not at all just simply too late for me? And I can assure you that it is absolutely and completely not. I have personally been able to see women who are in their 60s, their 70s, and even their own 80s, be able to rebuild a great deal of their own personal strength and of their own personal confidence through the simple and the gentle practice of these very same steps. And your own body is a remarkably and an incredibly responsive thing, no matter what your own personal age may be. So here is a little bit of a challenge for you. The very next time that you are able to laugh, that you are able to sneeze, or that you are able to cough, I would like for you to please try to pay a little bit of an attention. Are you able to feel your own pelvic floor as it is beginning to engage? Or does it in fact just simply feel a little bit weak to you? And that very same sense of an awareness is the very first and the most important step to be able to begin to rebuild. And as you are beginning to practice all of this, I would like for you to please try to remember that the experience of an intimacy is not at all just about your own personal sense of a pleasure. It is in fact all about your own personal sense of a freedom. It is all about your own personal ability to be able to laugh without any sense of a fear, to be able to travel without any sense of a worry, and to be able to live without any sense of an embarrassment. But there is still one more very important layer of all of this that we need to be able to uncover, the most tender and the most human layer of them all. Because the experience of an intimacy is not at all only about your own delicate tissues, your own hormones, or your own muscles. It is also all about how you are able to see yourself. It is all about your own personal sense of an identity, of a joy, and of whether or not you are still able to feel alive in your very own skin. And in the very next part of our discussion today, I am going to be sharing with you the very powerful and the very poignant story of Gloria, who was a 69-year-old woman who had once said to me, "I am able to smile for every single other person, but on the inside I just simply feel so very gray." And I am also going to be showing you exactly how the simple and the profound act of her being able to reconnect with her very own body was able to restore not just her own personal health, but also her own personal spirit. And please be sure to stay with me, because this may just be the most powerful part of our entire journey. We have just been able to talk about all of the many different and distinct tissues that are in your own body. We have just been able to talk about all of the many different and distinct hormones that are in your own body, and we have also just been able to talk about the very important and the very integral role of your own pelvic floor. But now we have finally arrived at the very deepest and the very most profound layer of them all, how you are able to see yourself. Because the experience of an intimacy is not at all only about your own sense of a circulation or of your own muscles. It is in fact all about your own personal sense of an identity. It is all about whether or not you are still able to feel alive in your very own skin. And it is all about whether or not you are still able to recognize the very same woman who is smiling back at you in the mirror. Far too many women who are in their 60s, their 70s, and beyond are all able to describe the very same quiet and the very same subtle shift in their own lives, not at all any kind of an illness and not at all any kind of a diagnosis, but just simply a slow and a gradual fading. And they will so often say to me, I just feel so very invisible, or I just feel so very gray, or I just do not at all feel like me anymore. And that is exactly what is able to happen when a profound and a deep sense of a connection to your very own body is able to disappear from your own life. And it is not at all just a physical sense of a strength that you are able to lose, it is in fact something that is so much deeper than that. It is your own personal sense of a vitality, of a femininity, and of a profound sense of a belonging to yourself. Please allow me to tell you all about Gloria. She was 69 years of age, she was a widow, she was a very disciplined woman, and by all external appearances she had been thriving, she had been eating very well, she had been walking on a daily basis, and she had been volunteering at her own local church. And from the outside she had been doing every single thing right, but when she had first sat down in my own office, a great many tears had then begun to well up in her own eyes. I am able to smile for every single other person, she had said to me, but on the inside I just simply feel so very gray. And she had not at all been able to touch her own body in many years, not at all out of a sense of a shame, but simply out of a sense of a habit. She had simply and purely stopped, and that very same absence had then been able to dull her own personal spirit, and she had then begun to avoid all of the many different mirrors in her own home, not at all because of any sense of a vanity, but simply because she had no longer been able to recognize the very same woman that she had seen in them. So we had then decided to begin with some very small and with some very gentle steps. We had then been able to begin by her simply placing her own hand over her own heart, during some very slow and some very deep breaths. We had then been able to begin by her simply resting her own palms on her own belly, in some very quiet and in some very peaceful moments. And we had then also been able to begin by her simply moisturizing her own arms and her own legs, with a profound and with a beautiful sense of an intention, as a genuine and as a heartfelt act of a kindness to herself, instead of as just another one of her many different and distinct routines. And then something that was truly and utterly remarkable had then begun to happen. Within just a few short weeks, she had then begun to dress herself in some much brighter and in some much more vibrant colors. She had then begun to laugh so much more easily, and she had even then decided to join a local art class that she had for so long been far too shy to be able to try. And one day she had then looked at me and had said, I feel so much more like myself once again, for the very first time in many years. And then there was the story of Margaret, who was the very same 81-year-old woman that I had mentioned to you a little bit earlier. And from the outside she had looked so very fulfilled. She had had her own beautiful garden, she had had her own beloved book club, and she had had a great many different and distinct friends. But on the inside she had confessed to me, I feel as though I am now just simply living from my own neck up. And she had not at all been sick, and she had also not at all been depressed. She had in fact just simply felt so very incomplete. And with a great deal of a gentle and of a loving encouragement, Margaret had then begun to explore her very own body once again, not at all with a sense of an urgency, and not at all with a sense of a performance, but simply with a profound and with a beautiful sense of a tenderness, of a slowness and of a great deal of a patience. And just 3 short months later she had then come into my own office with a beautiful and a brilliant light in her own eyes and had said, Dr. Stones, I do not at all feel young once again, but I do in fact feel real once again. And that is the very essence of this entire conversation. The experience of an intimacy is not at all about the act of trying to turn back the clock. It is in fact all about the profound and the beautiful process of reclaiming your own personal sense of a wholeness. And when a woman is finally able to reconnect with herself, her own posture is able to shift, her own laughter is able to return, and her own spirit is able to glow. And here is what I so very deeply and so very profoundly want for every single woman who is listening to me right now to be able to take to her own heart. There is no expiration date on your own personal right to a joy, no birthday at all is able to make you any less deserving of a pleasure, and no number at all is able to erase your own personal sense of a worth. You are not at all past your own prime, you are in fact still evolving, you are in fact still adapting, and you are in fact still allowed to be able to thrive. So where can you be able to begin? And if you have been feeling so very disconnected, I would like for you to please try to start with some very small and with some very sacred steps. I would like for you to please try to take 3 very deep and very slow breaths, with your own hand on your own chest. I would like for you to please try to say something that is very kind and that is very loving to yourself in the mirror. I would like for you to please try to moisturize your own skin very slowly, with a profound and with a beautiful sense of an appreciation for every single inch of your own skin that has been able to carry you through your own life. And I would like for you to please try to stroke your own cheek, as though you were trying to comfort a very beloved loved one. And all of these very same acts may at first seem to be quite small and to be quite insignificant to you, but they are in fact all very powerful and very profound signals to your own brain and to your own body that are able to say, I am still here, and I still belong to me. And if you should feel that you are now ready to do so, you can then begin to reintroduce the experience of an intimacy into your own life, not at all as some kind of a chore and not at all as some kind of an obligation, but as a precious and as a beautiful gift to your own sense of a circulation, a gift to your own hormones, a gift to your own pelvic muscles, and a gift to your very own soul, a gift that is able to say, I am still worthy. So here is my final and my most heartfelt invitation to you. If today's conversation has been able to stir something deep down inside of you, I would be so very honored if you would please not keep it all silent. I would be so very honored if you would please leave a comment down below. And I would be so very honored if you would please write, I'm still here, if you are now ready to be able to reclaim your own personal sense of a connection. And I would also be so very honored if you would please share your own personal story, your own personal questions, and your own personal hope. And when you are able to speak these very same truths, you are then able to create a beautiful and a supportive circle of a support for every single other woman who has ever felt all alone in her own personal journey. And please, I would be so very grateful if you would please share this very same video with a sister, with a daughter, or with a friend. And you may never at all know just who may be quietly and secretly carrying the very same questions, the very same struggles, and the very same longing for a profound sense of a reconnection. At Eldercare Wellness, we so very deeply and so very profoundly believe that all women are so very deserving of some honest and of some compassionate conversations about the process of an aging, conversations that are able to honor not just your own body but also your very own soul. So please take a very deep breath, please place your own hand over your own heart, and please be sure to remember this: you are still here, you are still alive, and you still deserve to be able to experience a profound sense of a joy. I'm Dr. Lily Stones, and I thank you for your time. And before we close, let me remind you, this video is for educational purposes only. It does not replace medical advice. Every woman's body is unique. If you are experiencing pain, significant changes, or have personal concerns, please consult with your healthcare provider. Your well-being deserves personalized care.